Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Farm, and today I want to talk about the pros and the cons of a Quonset hut like I'm standing in now compared to a pole barn or any other type of equipment shed that you might want to build. Now I have a 30 foot by 50 foot pole barn. I have a 30 by 40 foot open-sided pole barn, and then I have the 30 foot by 60 foot Quonset hut that I built myself a few years ago. So I've had this and I've been using it for a long time, and I've got the other buildings, so I have a good reference to compare to. So what I want to talk about first is what it cost to build this, how hard it was to build, and then I want to get into how I use it and kind of the pros and the cons of usability for a building like this. Now, if you've just bought one of these or you're thinking about buying one and you want to fully understand the process of building it, every day that we worked on this, we recorded a build video. So there's like a dozen videos out there of building it. And then there is also a 45-minute summary that shows from site prep all the way through the finished building in one video. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video if you want to check it out. The first thing I want to point out is that this video is not sponsored in any way. I paid cash for this building. I have no links or nothing to sell here. I'm just sharing my experience. So we bought the property and it had two buildings. One building was completely occupied by a business I was running at the time. The other building, I stuck my tractor attachments in it and it was full. And I wanted another building to keep equipment in. And I started looking at pole barns, and I told my wife, I said, I think I'd like to build another pole barn. And she was just dead set against it. And you know, you're looking, they're gonna be like $40,000 to $50,000 for something this size. I thought, you know, we just bought the house. I just financed all my equipment, got way too much debt, and she was probably right. But I had a little bit of cash, and I was at a farm show, and a guy selling these flagged me down. He's like, hey, you know, we can get you one of these super cheap. And I stood there and talked to him, and it was going to be $11,000 for a 30 foot by 40 foot building. And he said, all you got to do is put like 10 or 20% down. I don't remember how much. I think it might have been 10% down, put $1,100 down. This was during COVID. They're like, it's going to be like a 6-month wait. And then at the end of 6 months, you just have to pay the balance off. And without talking to my wife, I put the deposit down that day. I was just like $11,000. We were having a conversation about a $40,000 to $50,000 building, and it didn't make sense to just have one more place to keep stuff stored indoors. But at $11,000, I'm like, man, I can't pass that up. Then I ordered the building, and about a month later, I was thinking about it, and I said, you know, I'd like it a little bigger. So I upped the order to 30 by 60. So that's the size of the building we're in, 30 foot wide, 60 foot long. I also purchased end walls, but I did not end up putting them up. I didn't buy the doors, but that's a whole nother conversation that we'll get into when we talk about usability. For 90% of people, they would probably want the end walls and the doors. For my usage, I think I like it open the way it is. I've been using it this way for a few years, and I never think to myself, man, I wish I had some doors for this. I like it open the way it is. So the starting price was $11,000, made the building longer. It took it up to around $13,000 or $14,000. I purchased the end walls with no doors, took it up to $17,000. And I still have those end walls. I've never put them up. So I'm not going to talk too much about pricing on the end walls and doors because I didn't even use them, and I don't remember what the doors would have cost, but they would have been quite a bit, enough so that the guy I got the building from told me he recommended to most people to build your own doors. You come out ahead that way. So I'm sitting in a really big building that on paper was $14,000, but there's been a lot of inflation, so let's call it $18,000 today. I actually asked some questions at the last show I was at to one of the dealers about pricing. Let's say that this that I'm sitting in is $18,000. There are obviously some other cost in getting it put up. For me personally, my building is setting on an area that used to be a pretty steep hill. It sloped down quite a bit this way and across this way. We had a transit level out here, and from that corner to this corner of the building was about a 6-foot elevation drop. Now, while I'm waiting on the building to be delivered, I got quotes for every aspect of this. The quote to have this site leveled was like $3,500 or $4,500, somewhere in the $4,000 range. It's been several years. I don't remember every detail of the pricing, but that was the bids I got. I wasn't going to do that. I rented a machine, paid one guy to help me do the work so we could have two machines running at the same time, leveled this site. Cost of site prep with the machine rental was like $1,500, but also that was a week-long machine rental and we only used it 3 days on the site prep. So I got 4 more days out of that machine rental and we dug a pond expansion. So really all of that cost did not have to be in there. I could have spent less than half of that on a weekend rental or a 2-day rental or something and got this work done. But that was my first additional cost. It was about $1,500 for site prep. The next thing was what to set the building on. So whenever I called and I ordered the extra length on the building, made the building bigger, and ordered the end walls, he said, we need to know if you are setting this on ground level or elevated. And I was like, well, what are the reasons to do it either way? He said, your walls start to curve as they come up and you start losing height. And if you're ever going to have like an excavator in here or do anything that takes all that height, or if you want to put in a loft, you can cheaply add height to your building by setting it on concrete. And he suggested doing a 2-foot concrete. Now this 30-foot wide building makes the center peak 14 foot, but I set it on 2-foot walls, making it 16 foot to the peak on mine. So this comes to the next thing. We did our site prep, we flattened this pad, and we built the runouts. And then it was, okay, I need to have concrete walls put in that are 2 foot tall. Well, that was gonna be like $8,000. I actually, when we were doing the site prep, I dug foundation walls so that they could pour the foundation below ground and have it stick up 2 foot. Well, that was gonna be like $8,000 to $10,000 for all that concrete. I made my trenches a little bit wide, and that's a lot of concrete, and they would have to build forms and all that. Said, no way I'm spending $8,000 to $10,000 on a foundation for a building that I only originally planned to spend $11,000 on. So what I ended up doing was buying construction blocks. So in my area, if you go to any of the places that deliver concrete, that run concrete trucks, they're mixing all that concrete in their area, and any overruns or excess concrete or anything like that, they pour into these forms and they build these construction blocks that weigh like 4,000 pounds. I think these blocks are about 6 foot long and 2 foot wide and 2 foot tall, and they weigh like 4,000 pounds. I bought a bunch of those super cheap and built my walls out of that. That cost me about, I think those blocks cost me like $1,000 or $1,200. I got a good deal on them, but it was so much cheaper than having concrete poured. So that saved me a lot of money there. So now we're at roughly $3,000 and we haven't put up the building yet. Next thing I did was bring in rock to set in between these rock walls as the floor of the shop. And I've never had any grass grow up through it or anything. And there's no dirt showing through. It doesn't get muddy in here. Just putting that rock down has worked out great for me. I think I spent around $600 on the rock to put in here. So that was my next expense. And while we're talking about expenses, I also paid around $500 to people to come help me put this building up. Just paying people by the hour to help me out when I needed more help than I could get volunteers for. I also bought one section of scaffolding. So I estimated that I spent around $5,000 for site prep and concrete, equipment, paying people to help. My total expenses outside of buying the building was around $5,000. I've also got several $100s of lights and wiring in here that I didn't factor in. So that takes us to a little bit under $20,000 to buy the building, get it put up, and have lights put in. So it ended up costing me a lot more than it felt like it would when I was at the farm show, but it's still less than half of what it would cost me to have a pole barn put up that was this size, 30 foot by 60 foot. That's a big building. So now let's talk about the process of building it. I would not say it was easy to build this, and it was time consuming because there are so many bolts that have to be put in, and you've got to put them in, and you're working your way across the top, putting those in, and then you have to come back through and tighten them afterwards. And it was time consuming and it was a lot of work. But comparing putting this up to, say, doing it myself and building a pole barn, it's not even in the same ballpark. And it takes a lot more expertise to build a pole barn than it does to put one of these up. And you know what? I guess I wasn't being fair in the description, because when I'm talking about $40,000 to $50,000, that's not me building it. That is a company coming in and building it for me, and it's just done. So I did get a quote on having this put up. I think it was around $8,000 to have this put up. So now we'd be at like $28,000, and you're getting into a competitive range. Although that $8,000 means I wouldn't have had to pay the guys to help me or buy the scaffolding. So it is what it is, but it's still a cost saving. When it comes to actually building this, the hardest part was definitely the first arch and learning a routine. But as we got through it, we got better and better at it. And once I learned the basic technique, we could put up an arch in about 2 hours. And that is without a scissor lift. We were doing it all with ladders and ropes and a tractor and things like that. And so each arch is 2 foot. 60-foot building means 30 arches at about $2 or 2 hours per arch means 60 hours to put this up with 3 people. So you're talking about 180 man hours to put this up. Now, every time I post about this, somebody tells me that they did it by themselves with no help, and it only took them 3 hours or whatever. And there's some guys that are just awesome, better than me, faster, more clever with their building technique. I'm just telling you what my experience was. It took about 2 hours. And if you had pre-built all the arches, it would go up much faster and things like that. But for me, we would build an arch on the ground, lift the ends up, and then stand it up, and then go through and put the bolts in, and then go back through and tighten the bolts. And that took about 2 hours per arch. Well, as I was building this, I was thinking to myself, this isn't nearly as good as a pole barn. Pole barns, can be finished on the inside a lot better and a lot nicer. And I'm settling for something inferior to save money. That was my mindset as I was doing it. But as I think about it right now, a pole barn would not serve the functionality. It would not be usable in the way that this building is usable. So let me show you what I mean by that. So most of the time, I keep my side-by-side and my tractor parked in this end. They're 90% covered because I've got the first 18 foot or 20 foot or so of this open. As a matter of fact, let's count. Each of these is 2 foot. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. There's 18 foot is right here. So that lets me store some equipment on this side, but then I just move it out of the way when I want to use the sawmill. So I run my mill right here. I've got lumber storage on each side. This is lumber I've milled that is sitting here drying. In this tote is a DIY power station that I most of the time run the lights on, although right now I've taken my solar panels and I'm using them for something else. So I'm running my high bay lights off of an extension cord. Okay, I've got some fuel storage in here. I've got some wood planks that are processing. I use this engine hoist for turning logs. And then I've got all my firewood stuff set up in here. Sometimes I have a bunch of equipment in this side, sometimes I don't. It depends on the season and what else I have going on. Speaking of firewood equipment, the vertical splitter and the Easton Made 1222 are staying here. Now, I'm going to be using those obviously, but this Easton Made Ultra is for sale right now. If anyone's interested in this, it's being sold by Easton Made. And then I've got my log deck right here. So for the most part, I bring logs in here, set them there, and then process my wood, and then it comes back out this side. Current temperature right now is 93 degrees. At 93 degrees, I wouldn't really want to be spending a whole lot of time cutting firewood or running a sawmill. But the wind almost always blows north and south in here, and that's the way my buildings are set up. And with this wind, I have a really nice breeze in here. It's not bad at all. On a day when it's 93 degrees, I can stand in here all day and split firewood, no problem. Wow, I just noticed something that I've never seen in here before. There is a big wasp nest or hornet's nest up there. I'm gonna have to deal with that, but not right now. I'll let them be for now. What do you do when you see a nest like that? Do you go get some spray and go after them? I have in the past. Part of me also says they'll probably just leave me alone if I leave them alone. So let's talk about usability in here. My sawmill can handle a log 16 foot long. And having this set up the way it is, I can bring those long logs in here, set them down. Whereas, what percentage of garage doors that you put in a shop can accommodate driving in and out with a 16-foot log? You'd have to have like a single 20-foot bay door or like your swing out doors, but you're not putting that on a pole barn. So if you're getting a pole barn, you're gonna have to add a bunch of cost if you wanted to use it this way for getting that super wide door. So to use this the way I use it, you'd have to have a lot of doors that swung open because you can't run log splitters inside of a pole barn. Obviously, you're not gonna hang out inside of a building with that exhaust from the engine filling the building up with fumes. Now, even if I had a really wide set of doors on here, I could not park all of my equipment in here. So like if we have a hailstorm, I might put the side-by-side over there and then my truck in here because my truck won't fit in the garage, and then the tractor over here, and then move a little bit of stuff over here, put the excavator and the mini skid in here, and have all my equipment under roof. And you can't do that on any kind of pole barn unless the entire side opens, and I've never seen that. My concern when I was thinking about getting this building is that the curved outside walls cause you to lose space. But my standing reach is 8 foot. And I'm standing with my foot against the wall, reaching straight up, and it just barely starts to curve in by my 8 foot reach. So you are not really losing space here. Now, a lot of people, I'm in a Facebook group for Quonset hut homes, and people will put these up and then frame inside of them and make it into a house with a loft. And you could easily do that. Now, for me, I'm not sure if this is the most leak-proof, leak-resistant building. You have to be really careful with the way you put it together and making sure all that those bolts are sealed up. But a lot of people do it. You would just need to have a little bit more care in the build than I probably did to make sure that all of those washers are perfectly torqued and not smashed down to allow minor leakage. So as I was building this, I thought I'm losing a lot of the convenience and the benefits of a pole barn, and there is some of that, but not nearly as much as I thought. And I still have that flexibility. I could decide to put up end walls, frame this in, and use it that way. But what I decided after putting the building up is that I like it with the open ends. Now you can do the open side pole barn. It's basically just a roof. The difference with that, number one, is it's not fully shaded. Like this is fully shaded, the entire thing, because it still has the sides. And again, you could buy or build a pole barn with open ends. But if you're doing that, what is the advantage of the pole barn? Because the advantage is not strength or durability. This building has a 190 mile per hour wind rating because of the curved design. And I don't know if that is affected by the open ends, but this does make like a wind tunnel. And if you had one end closed and the other open, maybe you would take away your wind rating. But this curved structure, they say it gives you a 190 mile per hour wind rating, which is more than double what you're going to get on any pole barn. So if you're in a tornado or hurricane part of the country, you should be good to go with a Quonset hut. Something else people worry about is snow load. And I have seen people say that they had buildings collapse due to snow in the extreme northern climate where they had 6 foot of snow set on it for months at a time. They say these are rated for 150 pounds per square foot. So if you imagine a square foot, how high would you have to pile a square foot of snow before it was 150 pounds? Seems like a lot. I have no concerns about that at all. We get minimal snow. Now, what about durability? How long will one of these last? Well, according to Google, your range is going to be 50 to 100 years. And these weren't really popularized 100 years ago. So we don't have the proof of that, but that's what Google tells me. It is an extreme galvanized steel. It's a really high quality galvanized steel that has a 40-year rust warranty. Basically, they say this will not have any substantial rust, guaranteed for 40 years. Now, if you've just bought one of these or you're thinking about buying one and you want to fully understand the process of building it, every day that we worked on this, we recorded a build video. So there's like a dozen videos out there of building it. And then there is also a 45-minute summary that shows from site prep all the way through the finished building in one video. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video if you want to check it out. So would I build this again? Yes, I absolutely would. I think it's the right choice for me. It just barely fit into the budget I had at the time, and nothing else would have been affordable for me. So it was this or nothing. And I've been very happy with this building. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.